In this exciting episode, Perry plays Papa. Feast your eyes, all you Della and Perry shippers out there. This is as close as you're gonna get to the two getting hitched. It's Season 2, Episode 27 of Perry Mason, The Case of the Deadly Toy. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy, and my purpose here is pretty simple: provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do a pod for every episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll look at some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Each episode I'll give a brief refresher on the plot, and if the episode was based on a novel, I'll compare the book with its television adaptation. Next, I'll list some key pieces of trivia, as well as tackle the episode's main theme. We'll feature a Perry Proverb, a moment of wisdom from the man himself, and then we'll finish with a post-case water cooler, where just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can rehash the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library! Each episode in the law library, we return to prior cases to refresh our memories about Perry's past, so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. In this visit to the library, we deepen our understanding of what a witness can and can't say. Dick Benedict initially answers Perry's questions with reserve, but then he starts adding vitriolic commentary.
Did you incur an injury at the restaurant that night in San Francisco?
Yes.
The decedent struck you?
Yes. With brass knuckles. And if you're looking for a motive for me, you've got it. I hated him enough to kill him.
Berger's upset. The judge is upset. Witness, stand down.
Your Honor.
Order.
The witness will desist from any of these outbursts and confine himself to a simple answer without volunteering any information.
So, we get a hint at what witnesses can and can't say, but here's a follow-up question. Would it have been okay if Perry had proceeded to ask, "Are you saying that you, Dick Benedict, had a motive for killing Martin Selkirk?" Is that a viable question? I wouldn't think so. How about, did you hate the deceased? That seems allowable. How about, did you want to kill Martin Selkirk? I think so too. But then, of course, Hamilton Berger would have the trump card on redirect. He would ask, did you kill Martin Selkirk? And that's a put up or shut up question that I'm not sure Dick Benedict has the guts to answer. I'm sure we've encountered other episodes where a witness has been told to answer the question they've been asked and nothing more, but no particular examples are coming to mind. If you have some, send them along. It might also be worth noting that if the judge were to prohibit any statement by witnesses that go far afield from the question asked, almost none of the confessions, accusations, general climactic revelations that come from the witness stand in most of this show's episodes would be admissible. It'd be like the judge calling out Barbara Haywood for contempt in the case of the bedeviled doctor, with the real admonition from the judge being, you can't react like that now. Just wait 10 minutes. If you want to act the fool and show us that you're the murderer, then make your outburst in a few scenes. Thank you. Yours truly, the judge. We'll keep our ears peeled for witnesses overstepping their bounds as we look at the plot of this and future episodes. Now, the case of the deadly toy. Martin Selkirk. Even on a show that features love gone wrong in almost every single episode, this sadistic and possessive hosebag stands out. Apparently, Claire Allison was dating this rich boy sadist, but she wisely broke it off. Now she's hanging out with Dick Benedict, and Selkirk isn't happy about it. So he starts doing things like this.
But this is the 10th letter. They come at least twice a week. And it's always the same kind of story about some woman being killed because she left a man.
And then doing things like this.
Why don't you look where you're going?
I'm sorry, Claire, but your escort was so clumsy.
Claire is justifiably worried. She thinks she'll get some relief when Lorraine Jennings calls her up. Now, Lorraine was Martin's first wife. Lorraine and Martin are in a fight over the custody of their boy, David. Claire flies from San Francisco to L.A., only to find more than she bargained for.
But I thought that you and your husband had some plan to help me.
This is part of it. The testimony that we bring out at the hearing will tie in with those letters and clippings that he's been sending you. It'll be obvious that Martin's been threatening you, and then you can go to the district attorney, and Ralph and
Lorraine, I'd love to help you, but I just don't want to get any more involved.
Well, Claire chases after sleep by agreeing to take a sedative from some total strangers. Then she gets up in the night and hears this. Even worse, while stumbling around the Jennings house, she finds a printing press like the one that was used to stamp the envelopes she assumed Selkirk had been sending her. The music says it all. Claire heads for Perry's office. He takes her case and they beat it back out to the Jennings home. Lorraine and her husband Ralph are confused. The hand-press printer is nowhere to be seen. David's gone too. Uh-oh. Perry and Claire drive out to Martin Selkirk's joint and discover a body. Now it's going to get difficult. Perry realizes the key witness may just be David. So he's got to figure out a way to get info out of David's babysitter, Hannah Barton. And that means adopting the identity of, you guessed it, Mr. Street.
How would you like to pose as my wife?
During working hours?
You want a bonus?
Don't sell yourself short.
What Hannah reveals doesn't reflect too highly on her.
Well, child's bound to be nervous with a horrible father like that, Mr. Selkirk. Why, the last time David came back from his weekend visit, he was so nervous and upset that the only way I could calm him down was to give him that...
Give him what, Miss Barton? Well, you were able to calm him down.
Yes, I just let him play with his favorite toy. Anyway, I didn't see no harm. It was empty.
You actually let him play with a gun?
Plus, I gotta say, it doesn't help that she perks right up when Perry starts throwing money her way.
We'll be calling on you again.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Lurking in the background, Martin Selkirk's father. Early on, he told Perry all he cared about was his grandson. Now, Perry feels he's responsible for David's mysterious disappearance. Well, Perry tracks David down. He's in the care of Mrs. Hathaway. Oh, Mr. Drysdale. And she explains the tough road ahead for young David.
Sometime in the middle of the night, his real father slipped into the tent when David was asleep. David was awakened suddenly, and naturally he was frightened. He pulled the gun out from under the pillow and fired. Mr. Jennings kept telling him it was all just a bad dream. His grandfather kept trying to tell him it was a dream, too.
Perry knows there's more to the story. Really, there's only one suspect, Ralph Jennings, and Perry surmises that David's bullet may have not killed Martin, but may have...
I submit that you could have told the truth, that David did not kill his father.
I tell you, he fired a shot.
But that shot did not kill Martin Selkirk, because Martin Selkirk was nowhere on the premises.
Now, what happened to the bullet?
How long have you had arthritis?
You think the shot hit me?
There's one way you can prove I'm wrong. It was the dog, wasn't it? It was Mr. Gus that David hit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Where is the dog, Mr. Jennings?
I killed Martin Selkirk. You've got to believe me, Lorraine. I did it for you.
Well, the explanation we get for how the crime went down is pretty ham-fisted. Here's Paul trying to lay it out.
Well, then he was the one who sent those letters to Claire Allison.
Would you like to hear the whole story?
Yes, Paul, go on.
Jennings felt sure that Selkirk could be blamed for those letters. But when Claire discovered the printing press, that changed everything. Jennings became rattled and...
And when Claire left the house, he drove down to Ocean Beach and killed Mr. Selkirk.
That's the whole story.
Let's not forget that Della calls Paul beautiful, then lures him into babysitting duties with Hannah Barton. Good times all around.
Hi, beautiful. Where have you been? I just remembered I was supposed to take care of Jill Carter's babysitting problem tonight. You know, sort of in payment for borrowing her child.
I'd be very glad to help.
Oh, would you, Paul?
It'd be my pleasure.
Good. I have just the sitter to keep you company. Hannah Barton.
Earl Stanley Gardner wrote the novel The Deadly Toy in 1959. It first appeared as a serial in the Saturday Evening Post and then later as a novel. Its plot is largely the same as the television episode, save for the name. So we've got Mervyn Selkirk, Norda Allison, Barton Jennings, Robert is the son, not David, Hannah Bass rather than Hannah Barton, and the dog is named Rover instead of Mr. Gus. The only interesting thing the book adds is a backstory for Mr. Jennings' relationship with Selkirk. Here's Paul's breakdown from the final chapter. Quote, when Lorraine left him and married Barton Jennings, Selkirk quietly proceeded to get all the information he could get on Barton. It was plenty. He found that Jennings was treasurer and manager of the Savings and Loan Corporation. Selkirk deliberately schemed to get Jennings to invest in some so-called sure things, and before Jennings knew it, he was hopelessly involved. Then Mervyn Selkirk began to put on the pressure. He owned Barton Jennings' body and soul. Lorraine had no idea there was any contact between the two men, but her husband was reporting regularly to her ex-husband. End quote. So Mr. Jennings had had enough. He gave Selkirk what was coming to him. That kind of speech is too long for the show, though. If you want a real denouement with every last detail filled in, check out the novel's final chapter. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is something about a particular actor or actress in the episode, and a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul for this episode involves driving and traveling distances. We get 3 references to LA adjacent locations. One is Sonora, Mexico, David's vacay destination. Olay!
I'm a little surprised they didn't call you to take David away this morning.
Well, they did. But I couldn't take off for Sonora, Mexico at 10:15 in the morning just like that.
Then there's Crystal Lake, the site of Camp Kilgore.
What was the name of that camp? Kilgore, Camp Kilgore.
Yeah, it's up at Crystal Lake.
How long does it take to get up there?
Which one of us is going up there?
Don't forget Hannah Barton's barking about having to drive all the way from Brentwood.
Isn't it nice? How do you do? You get me all the way from Brentwood.
So, the Paul prompt, how far away are each of these places? And we'll use as a reference point the Brent building. That's right, Perry's office. He's up there working most of the time anyway, isn't he? Just go ahead and plug in 550 South Flower Street in LA. That is the real street address of the building that was used as the Brent building, actually the Superior Oil Company headquarters. See what kind of commute time we're talking about for our boys in LA. Our Della for this episode is Nancy Culp. That's right, Mrs. Hathaway herself. We saw her once before in a small role in the Case of the Prodigal Parent, where she's spiriting away Fay Ray, and now she's spiriting away a small child.
Miss Collins, do you know you're technically guilty of kidnapping?
Oh, no, Mr. Selkirk told me that.
Culp was born in Pennsylvania in 1921. Her family moved to Miami-Dade County, Florida in 1935. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in journalism from Florida State College for Women in 1943. After some graduate work at the University of Miami, she worked as a feature writer for the Miami Beach Tropics newspaper, and she wrote profiles of people like Clark Gable and the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. During World War II, she left the University of Miami and joined the women's branch of the United States Naval Reserve, where she obtained the rank of lieutenant, junior grade, and received several decorations. She was honorably discharged in 1946. In 1951, she married Charles Malcolm Dacus, whom she divorced in 1961, and she moved out to Hollywood, California to work in MGM's publicity department. Director George Cukor said she should try acting. In that same year, she debuted as a character actress in The Model and The Marriage Broker. During the 50s, she appeared on television programs like I Love Lucy, Jack Benny, The Twilight Zone, and Maverick. And in 1959, the same year she appeared on the Case of the Deadly Toy, Culp had roles in movies like Forever Darling, The Three Faces of Eve, The Parent Trap, Who's Minding the Store, and The Aristocrats. Of course, you probably know her best from the role she took in 1962 as Jane Hathaway. Oh, Mr. Drysdale. Just had to get one more imitation in. That's it. Two's my limit. On the Beverly Hillbillies. In 1967, she received an Emmy Award nomination for her role. She was on the show until it was canceled in 1971. In 1984, after working with the Democratic State Committee in her home state of Pennsylvania, she received the Democratic Party nomination for the U.S. House of Representatives seat from the 9th Congressional District. Buddy Epson, her co-star on the Hillbillies, contacted her opponent, a representative named Schuster, and made an attack ad that referred to Culp as being too liberal. Culp lost. She disliked the way Epson had taken after her, and apparently Epson expressed remorse for doing the ad, and they only reconciled shortly before Culp's death. After her defeat, she worked at a private liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, where she taught acting. In 1989, she gave an interview to an activist named Bose Hadley, in which she responded to the question of her sexual orientation this way. Here's how I would ask the question, she said. Do you think that opposites attract? My own reply would be that I'm the other sort. I find that birds of a feather flock together. She was often called television's most homely girl, but many found her comedic skills heartwarming. She was diagnosed with cancer in 1990 and died at the age of 69 in California in 1991. Our Perry, of course, includes Perry's turn as a husband. I love this exchange between him and Della as they compete for their baby's affection.
I wonder if she'll come over to me.
Come on, honey. Come on, sweetie.
Come on over here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Ah, that's a girl. How's that?
It's just your fatal charm.
Yep, Perry's got away with children. By the way, this is how he treats the jury anytime he gets in front of them. Speaking of children, let's look at our theme for the episode now. Toys. Toys are playthings. So we start with the obvious toy, the gun. Listener Mark S. wrote the pod in March to say how much the casual gun handling in the show unnerved him. Well, in this episode, that casual gun handling reaches its apex. Hannah Barton's trying to give a boy peace of mind with a gun? Wow. Certainly there are more distressing toys at play here. The brass knuckles and the hand press printer used by Martin Selkirk. These are weapons that Selkirk, an overgrown kid, abuses. Just listen to him here. This is the way a child talks.
All my life I've had what I wanted. A man gets used to that. As for Miss Allison, I saw her. I liked her. I want her.
Which leads us to the most distressing pattern of the show, the way in which people themselves become the playthings of others. Poor David. He's getting passed from mother to father to grandfather to Hannah Barton to Catherine Collins, and the results are deadly. One father is gone, the stepfather is gone, the grandfather, don't even get me started. I'm glad you can wiggle your ears, David. If only that kind of entertainment had been enough for you. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb. Sometimes wisdom can come in the form of a question, where the answer is implied and the lesson clear. That's the case with this episode's proverb, unleashed during Perry's tete-a-tete with Hannah Barton.
Didn't you realize that that could have been very dangerous?
The unfortunate answer is no. Hannah Barton didn't realize it, though she should have, just like every other single character in the show who should know that getting on someone's bad list is an open invitation to either be murdered or wind up accused of murder. Whew. Fortunately, Perry only asks tough questions when he knows the answers. Well, except for the whole dog and arthritis gunshot thing, but let's not quibble and grab a swig from the water cooler.
You know, there is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we list some deleted scenes, content that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. It's a chance to crack some jokes and also reflect on what the episode left unanswered. So here they are, 8 deleted scenes from the case of the deadly gun. Number 1, the exact moment Claire knew she was out on Selkirk. Note, this scene is provided in the novel when Claire sees Papa Selkirk slap the boy. Number 2, Mr. Jennings just playing with the trains for a while. I mean, that's an American Flyers train set, people. Who could blame the man? Number 3, Della agonizing over which fake wedding ring she's going to wear for the Hannah Barton sting. Yep, check the footage. She's wearing a ring, fellas. Number 4, Perry changes the baby's diaper and has to call in Della for reinforcements. I mean, that would have been comedic gold, right? Number 5, Della tries unsuccessfully for 30 minutes to try to wiggle her ears. You could either play that scene like she's in the office and just sitting there trying to get her ears to move. She's sitting there in front of David while Perry's talking with Catherine. It could go either way. Number 6, can I just ask, what happens to the kid? What happens to David? I presume the mom is going to get custody rather than the I'm rich and above the law grandfather. But just a note, maybe we could get the dangerous dowager Matilda Benson to hook up with the greedy grandfather. They can marry each other and then hopefully recapture the glory of some generation past or whatever they're doing. Gotta say, those two deserve each other. Anywho, I'm not feeling good about David's future. So number 6 is, could we get a scene where Perry gives David a rousing pep talk? Maybe Perry's saving that one up for the case of the Spanish Cross, our next episode. Number 7, Claire gets and accepts a proposal from Lockjaw Dick Benedict. Come on, you know it's gonna happen. And then number 8, finally, Drake and Hannah Barton talk about child rearing while Paul smokes like a chimney and the kid acts super wild. So basically, we get a scene of Paul being a babysitter with Hannah Barton. Do you have any suggestions? Please send them on. Now, let's address last week's Paul prompt. We asked, just what did Danny Barker apply to his ice cream sundae? Here's that glug, glug, glug.
Mr. Frank Oxman. Wants to cash this?
My father, a.k.a. Dad Drake, had this to say, quote, I like to think that Danny Barker put some Bosco on his ice cream. It was a popular chocolate syrup in the 1950s, and it was a liquid that would produce the glug, glug, glug sound heard in the episode. In the 1950s, it was billed as milk amplifier. It's still sold today. The reason Barker used a small spoon and ate so methodically, he was eating mashed potatoes with TV lights. Incredibly odd. Ice cream would have melted immediately, so mashed potatoes were used instead. Not too tasty for Danny Boy. Thanks, Daddy-O, especially for sending me a link to this delightful commercial.
Hi, kids. Look at some delicious magic with the extra good chocolate-flavored syrup, Bosco.
But as Dad indicates, this is a generous reading. Danny Boy is probably pouring something a little bit stronger on his ice cream. My guess is amaretto. It's the behind the bar location, the shape of the bottle, the color of the liquid itself. That's what leads me to this conclusion. Amaretto is an almond-flavored liqueur, and believe me, you pop an amaretto ice cream search into Google, you'll find yourself some recipes. Even Barker's dessert is loaded. Our bonus poll, we asked, what was it that robotic Robert was reading his dowager grandmother in the climactic scene?
When a true thought enters the mind, it gives a light which makes us see a crowd of objects never perceived before.
The answer, as far as I can tell, comes from François-René de Chateaubriand, who wrote, and apparently, since I can only find the quotation itself, quote, as soon as a true thought has entered our mind, it gives a light which makes us see a crowd of other objects which we have never perceived before. And if you want to know, this quotation is all over the internet. There's no real source ever listed. I can't find the specific work by Chateaubriand that this quotation was pulled from. That's the closest I could find. But there are books from the early 20th century that ascribe this saying to Chateaubriand. And upon reflection, this statement is a little bit more profound than I gave it credit for being. Chateaubriand's point is that when we understand the truth, that is, when the truth enters our mind, we are then able to see things we couldn't see before. And I hope this is what happened to Matilda Benson in that case's climactic scene. As always, I'd love feedback about this particular episode or the podcast in general. Was there something about this episode you'd like to comment on or something you'd like to correct? You can email me at theperrypod@gmail.com. All PerryPod episodes are available via Spotify, YouTube, as well as iTunes. Check out theperrypod.com, our pod's website. Thanks again for joining me on this pod journey. Join us next time as we see what happens when Perry Mason goes Sam Spade. It's the case of the Spanish Cross. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat.